We should be proud of this country because we have a system of justice that works, and yet we do not. Who are the men that should be investigated? I'll name them right here. Leon Black. You don't even have to see past the redactions to see that this man needs to be investigated. Jess Staley, accused of terrible things. It's right there in the files. Why is he not being investigated? And Leslie Wexner.
Welcome back, everyone. What you're about to see is Representative Thomas Massie doing what very few in Washington have the backbone to do, demanding real, unfiltered accountability from a federal government that seems entirely too comfortable with secrecy. This floor speech matters because it cuts right to the heart of a massive double standard in our justice system. For years, the American public has been told that the wheels of justice turn slowly. But as Congressman Massie points out, countries like the UK and Norway have already handed down charges and forced high-profile resignations over the Jeffrey Epstein network. Meanwhile, our own Department of Justice and the FBI have produced 0 arrests from over 3 million documents. From a conservative perspective, this is a textbook bureaucratic failure and a glaring lack of transparency. Why is the FBI sitting on internal memos from a child sex trafficking case? Massie pulls no punches here. He calls out the absolute weaponization of redactions and demands to know why federal agencies are ignoring their legal obligations under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. He exposes a system that looks less like blind justice and more like elite protection. Watch this explosive clip for yourself and look closely at the double standards being exposed. If you are sick of the mainstream media cover-ups and want honest, conservative analysis that demands accountability from Washington, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications.
The gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Massie, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Congress created the Department of Justice. Congress funds the Department of Justice. And Congress is responsible for the oversight of the Department of Justice. When will we see justice? I'll tell you what I've not seen. I've not seen any arrests from the revelations in the Epstein files, over 3 million documents describing horrible things, describing unspeakable things, so much of it redacted. Over 24 people have resigned, CEOs, members of government worldwide. But I haven't seen any arrests or investigations here in the United States from this Department of Justice. Prince Andrew, Duke of York, who has since been stripped of his royal titles due to his affiliation with Jeffrey Epstein, has been arrested. Peter Mandelson, who previously served as UK's ambassador to the United States, resigned in disgrace from United Kingdom's House of Lords and the Labour Party, and he's been arrested. Former Prime Minister of Norway, Torbjørn Jagland, has been charged. But we don't see any charges, arrests, or investigations in the United States. What do we see? We see our FBI director celebrating in the locker room at the Olympics overseas. It's fine to be proud of this country, but we should be proud of this country because we have a system of justice that works. And yet we do not. Who are the men that should be investigated? I'll name them right here. Leon Black. You don't even have to see past the redactions to see that this man needs to be investigated. Jess Staley, accused of terrible things. It's right there in the files. Why is he not being investigated? And Leslie Wexner. Why did the FBI list him as a co-conspirator in their own documents in a child sex trafficking case, and then tell him, according to him, that they had no questions for him? Why is that? Well, the Epstein Files Transparency Act requires the DOJ and the FBI to disclose to us their internal memos and emails about how they made those decisions, whether to prosecute or not prosecute. Yet they have not delivered those memos. And we still don't have the memos and documents and emails from 2008 to explain why Jeffrey Epstein was given such a light sentence in what would have been an open and shut case of child sex trafficking. which allowed him to go back and recommit these terrible crimes, create hundreds of more victims, and ensnare so many other people in his conspiracy. Where are those documents that describe those decisions? We need justice. We want the Department of Justice to get to work, and that's what they need to do now. Madam Speaker, I rise today to let the American people know that this government is under siege. All three branches of this government is under siege by lobbyists and lawyers from a German company named Bayer. They spent over $9 million lobbying the executive branch and the legislative branch so that they don't have to be liable for any damages that their herbicide causes, otherwise known as Roundup. And they're having some success. Now, they haven't had any success yet in this chamber to get that immunity. They've had some success in the state legislatures, which are also under siege, to get this immunity from liability. Look, the Constitution guarantees people a trial if they've been harmed. Why are we contemplating going against the Constitution? The Attorney General has opined favorably for this German company in front of the Supreme Court about getting rid of any liability that they should have for any damages. And the most recent thing that we've seen, the executive branch. By the way, the President's Chief of Staff and the President's Attorney General worked for one of the biggest lobbying firms that's received hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars from Bayer. And maybe that's why we've seen an executive order that says that the production of this chemical from this German company is a national defense priority. And we know why they're doing that. It's to keep them from having any liability. Everybody in this country deserves their day in court. This is wrong. We shouldn't succumb to the lobbyists, not in the executive branch, not in the judicial branch, and certainly not here in Congress, and not in the state legislatures, but there's a lot of money at play. And I implore my colleagues to resist it and do not give them immunity. And I yield back.
The chair recognizes the woman from Minnesota, Ms. Morrison, for 5 minutes.
Folks, that is what leadership looks like. Thomas Massie just laid bare the exact frustration that millions of Americans feel every single day when they look at Washington. We are watching a two-tiered system of justice play out in real time, and Massie just blew the whistle on it from the House floor. Let's break down the strongest moments of this speech, because the arguments Massie presents are devastating to the DOJ's credibility. He starts with a fundamental constitutional truth. Congress created the DOJ, Congress funds the DOJ, and Congress is responsible for its oversight. So why is the executive branch treating congressional oversight like a polite suggestion? The most damning part of Massie's argument is the international comparison. Ask yourself this: how is it possible that the United Kingdom and Norway can look at the exact same network, strip royals of their titles, force massive political resignations, and issue actual arrests, while our own deep state produces absolutely nothing? Massie drops a brilliant, stinging rhetorical pivot here. While foreign nations are prosecuting criminals, where is our FBI director? He's overseas, celebrating in the locker room at the Olympics. It is a devastating visual contrast that perfectly illustrates a federal bureaucracy that has completely lost its sense of priority. But the real gotcha moment, the part that should make every single viewer stop in their tracks, is when Massie names names. He doesn't hide behind vague generalities. He calls out Leon Black, Jess Staley, and Leslie Wexner. Look at the specific fact Massie brings to light regarding Wexner. The FBI's own documents listed him as a co-conspirator in a child sex trafficking case, yet the Bureau allegedly told him they had no questions for him. How does that happen in a sane justice system? Why would an agency tasked with protecting the innocent tell a documented co-conspirator that they aren't interested in interviewing him? This is exactly why conservatives distrust these weaponized federal agencies. The Epstein Files Transparency Act legally requires the DOJ and the FBI to hand over internal memos explaining why they chose not to prosecute these individuals, yet they are actively defying the law and withholding the documents.
They are treating the American public with utter contempt. Politically, this exchange is going to fuel the massive growing public demand for a complete overhaul of the DOJ. When the public sees billionaires skating by without so much as a deposition, while regular Americans face the full, crushing weight of federal law for minor offenses, it breaks the social contract. Massie's speech hits a nerve because it proves the cover-up isn't a conspiracy theory, it's a documented bureaucratic reality. Then Massie pivots to a second and equally critical issue of government overreach, the massive lobbying push by the German corporate giant Bayer. He exposes how millions are being poured into Washington to give a foreign corporation total immunity from liability when their products harm American citizens. When the president's own chief of staff and attorney general have direct ties to the lobbying firms representing these mega corporations, the conflict of interest is staggering. As Massie rightly notes, the Constitution guarantees everyday citizens their day in court. Trying to strip away that right via executive maneuvers is a direct violation of our foundational principles. At the end of the day, Massie's speech is a masterclass in conservative populism. It's a demand for limited government, strict constitutional adherence, and total transparency. If our federal agencies refuse to enforce the law equally, then they have lost the consent of the governed. It's time to force these memos into the light, and it's time for Washington to finally deliver justice.